Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the welcome news that the government have relented and are now agreeing to vaccinate 16 to 17 year olds, but also how the decision, it's 2 or 3 months too late to avert a major problem, and what I think the reason is for this new policy. And I think it's the usual Brexit mentality. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So there are so many reasons why leaving the EU was bad that you sort of, I think, have to categorise them. So I would suggest there are 3 main categories. The first are the obvious reasons. It's damaged our economy, it's restricted our rights and freedoms, and it's meant that the civil service has been locked into a never-ending, years-long battle to make an obviously bad set of policies work, that they're not actually doing the work that they should normally be doing, which means lots of things falling by the wayside. The second category is that it is leading us to abandon any notion of leading the way or even helping out in tackling the climate emergency. The best the government have been able to do when people have attacked Brexit is to talk about entering into agreements with countries at the other side of the world for trade. It is the government's stated intention to replace European trade with Pacific trade. Not only won't this even come close to making up the shortfall, but it means putting goods onto boats that will have to travel across multiple expanses of water when we used to be able to sell it on the same continent. Goes without saying, this policy has a huge carbon cost, absolutely enormous, to say nothing of other forms of marine damage. But the third category, which links into the vaccination news here, is that other policies end up being adopted through the lens of a Brexit pissing contest. See, on the face of it, the news that Boris Johnson has agreed to vaccinate 16 and 17-year-olds is good. The virus transmits through children, and we are about to send them back to school soon without any measures in place to limit transmission. We didn't really have that many measures last year, and the ones they have are planned to be removed. This will inevitably drive another surge. Now, in England and Wales, kids go back to school and college in September. Not enough time to double vaccinate them. So it will still be bad. But something is better than nothing. But in Scotland, they go back the week after next. The government will say that this new decision has come as a result of advice from the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation. But there hasn't been any new science recently. We've known for a long time that the virus passes through teenagers very easily. There was a suggestion during the first wave with the original form of coronavirus, it doesn't transmit as easily in kids, although it was still argued there wasn't that much data. But we certainly know with the newer variants, the Alpha variant and the Delta variant that we've had in this country, yeah, absolutely rips through. And they may be less likely to develop symptoms. The symptoms may be milder, so less infectious in general. But there are so many jammed so closely together in education settings that the risk goes sky high. International opinion has been that this age group should be vaccinated for a while. The jury is still out on much younger children, granted. The World Health Organization does say that the Pfizer vaccine has been declared safe for children aged above 12. And that in actual fact you should vaccinate 12 to 15-year-olds at least who are in high-risk groups. But that is the general advice for the world. For that includes countries who need to carefully prioritise use of the vaccine. For world-beating countries who are absolutely knocking it out the park, the Pfizer vaccine has been declared safe for those aged 12 and up and should be used. Simple as that. No reason not to use it. France has been vaccinating anyone from the age of 12 upwards for over a month now, and 16 to 17-year-olds for 3 months. Ireland last month announced that it was ready to move on to vaccinating 12 to 15-year-olds. If we'd started back, say, when France did, we could have had teenagers double vaccinated with maximum protection ready for the autumn term, and then move on to the programme of boosters that's going to be needed for, again, starting with the highest risk groups who received their vaccinations first. Absolutely nothing has emerged very recently that meant we didn't have this policy before summer, but all of a sudden do now. Now, The committee does have a suitable scientific membership, but it is still politically guided. This is a political decision. Because again, you have to ask yourself, the reason why this group exists is so that the government can make political decisions but claim it's following the science. They did this in the first wave. And the question always has to be this to them. If you're following the science, why are we doing things differently to other countries? Why is our science different to everyone else's science? Why? So why is this decision as it is now? In my opinion, it's this. Our rate of vaccination stalled badly. It stalled badly some time ago. We started off by having the best rate in Europe. I talked about that recently. Now it's slipping. You know, when you go onto the government's vaccination page, so I did that this morning, and to try and get a few figures to compare. And cause the reason is I found a site that gives the percentage of the adult population in other European countries, not just EU countries, other European countries. But it didn't include the UK because it's only like EEA areas. And so I went onto the government's website for the UK value. And I thought even then that's given an advantage to the UK because other countries vaccinate kids and we don't. But I thought, yeah, let's just have a look. And I went onto the UK page. So it used to give the percentage of adults who'd been vaccinated. Not the total population, but of adults. Now it doesn't. Just gives the numbers, doesn't give the percentage. And I suspect the reason for this is because we've already been overtaken by a few percentage-wise. And more will be on the way. Because the EU's rate of vaccination, European countries in general, is fairly high right now. A bit of variation across different member states, but it's powering up. Ours has not. Boris Johnson was known to be frustrated by this. He doesn't fancy, I suspect, being asked how many countries in Europe have a higher vaccination rate than us when Parliament reopens in September. Because that would be the obvious opening line. If Keir Starmer doesn't say it, Ian Blackford probably should. You know, to ask the Prime Minister how many countries in Europe have vaccinated a higher proportion, per capita percentage, of their adult population than the UK. To which Boris Johnson would have to waffle on, and then they can use the second question to read out the list and go, oh, that country's in the EU there. Oh, they're in the European Medicines Agency, Prime Minister. That's funny, isn't it? Oh, so's that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. And we know that these countries are going to go ahead of us because there are some countries that look like they're significantly behind us on the second vaccinations, but ahead on the first. If they're ahead on the first and they're getting more supplies in than we are, they're going to overtake us on the second as well. Some already have, like I said. You know, there were reports that the government was seeking to bribe more young people to get vaccinated with kebabs. I don't think that's going too well. It wasn't just kebab. It was the things that they thought that young adults may like. And I'll tell you what might have worked, though. Not constantly downplaying the impact of COVID on people under the age of 80, maybe. Instead of making out that, yeah, it can kill your granny, you know, keep her safe, but everyone else will be fine, maybe we should have warned of the effects of long COVID, even if you don't die. Or maybe that lots of fit and healthy people have died from the disease. The latest doing the rounds on social media is a mountain climber, for goodness sake, younger than me, several years younger than me, clearly fitter, climbing mountains, who thought he didn't need the vaccine because worst case scenario he'd feel a bit rough if he caught it. He's dead now. Along with so many more that were led by those downplaying how serious this is. So what I think happened is that the uptake amongst the groups that still need the vaccination has dwindled badly. No surprise at all that uptake was very high amongst the older groups because even the government had no problem explaining the dangers to the older groups, but they downplayed it really badly for younger groups. Quelle surprise, younger groups aren't getting themselves vaccinated as much. So basically, the vaccination rate, Johnson wants that figure to go up. You know, purely, I suspect, it's an international measure. The kebabs aren't working like he'd hoped, so he's just decided to expand the available pool of recipients. Now, am I being cynical here? Just because that is a plausible explanation, might it not be that he's worried, for example, about when schools go back driving a new surge? You know, that would still, he could still really fear the political backlash, but it would still be a healthcare motivation for the policy. No, because consider this. This new policy is for 16 to 17-year-olds. Despite the advice being that the Pfizer vaccine, which, yes, okay, we don't actually have enough of, but that's our fault as well. Despite it being safe for those aged 12 and up, and we don't know, by the way, that it's not safe for those under. Don't think that means, oh, it's not safe for those under the age of 12. No, it's just we don't have enough information for that. It may well be. Needs to be more research done. But we do know it's safe for 12 and up. So this new policy, now it can help colleges, of course, because, 16 to 18-year-olds go to college. Though it is going to be limited without double vaccinations that are now impossible before they go back. In fact, even first vaccinations aren't happening before Scottish kids go back. But schools aren't getting much from this at all. Secondary schools are full of 11 to 16-year-olds. Yes, the odd one has a sixth form with some older ones. But by and large, secondary schools are full of 11 to 16-year-olds. None of their population, almost none, will be vaccinated. Not even once. Some teachers will. The vast majority of people being jammed in like sheep won't. And 12 to 15-year-olds, it will come as no surprise, outnumber 16 to 17-year-olds. And I've seen no scientific research which says, oh yeah, but 16 to 17-year-olds are much higher risk than 12 to 15. I've not seen that. If this decision was healthcare driven, it would be opened out to those aged 12 and up. If it was healthcare driven, we'd have actually done the 16 to 17-year-olds some time ago and then be moving on to the 12 to 15. As it was in other countries, months ago in some. And those are countries who were initially slower to get their vaccination programme moving. See, ordinarily, if it was a country that got a march on us and it vaccinated the younger ones earlier, well, okay, they started earlier. We started earlier and we're moving later towards the end. Our end game is later, a lot later. It absolutely made sense that kids be at the lower end of priority. Of course, I'm not suggesting we did this at the start of the year. That would be ridiculous. But from the start, they were shut out of the programme altogether. It was never the case that we're going to get down to kids at the end of it when everyone else has been done. It was always the case we're not vaccinating kids at all. That was scientifically illiterate. So obviously you had to wait to know that the vaccine would be safe for different age groups. I mean, things change, remember. We know that we don't give the AstraZeneca to younger people because of a slightly heightened risk. Now, the risk of the clots is less than the risk of COVID. So if you had nothing else, you would still give it. But we know Pfizer's fine. So we use Pfizer for the younger ones, AstraZeneca for the older ones. So no, the reason is purely and simply, Johnson wants the vaccination rates to go up to limit the damage from international comparisons. He's accepting now maybe that it's tough to persuade the groups who are eligible for vaccinations to get the jab when he's been telling them for over a year that they're not at risk from the virus, that it's all safe, it's fine. So he's expanding the pool. It will still knacker his comparison of adult populations because 16 to 17-year-olds do nothing for him there. But perhaps that's why the percentage figures have disappeared off the government website. But he wants some figures he can use. But like I said, it is still good news. A good policy motivated by selfish or even moronic reasons is still a good policy. We just need to hope that it has some positive impact before colleges reopen and hope that schools are included before too long as well. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.